All right. Hello, hello, hello. And welcome back to the reading stream. Today we're going to take a break from Dracula. Granted, I haven't read in a while. Well, but I had a hankering for something different. I had a hankering for some Sherlock Holmes. And as my own experience is a bit, uh, starting halfway through on accident, I'm going to be starting from the very, very beginning. First book ever published in the Sherlock Holmes canon, A Study in Scarlet. So let me go ahead and get my book. There we go. All right, let's see. Messing with the window here. Actually, maybe. Give me a moment. Da, 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 da. Let's see if this will work. Okay, that's not it. That is not gonna work. Let's try window capture book. Let's try display capture. No. Um, do, 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 do. Well, let me check something. How do I get okay, Mega Man is a window capture. So I should. Also, I was trying to put it in the wrong thing. Da, 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 da. So we just go another window capture. Book. Hold on. Da, 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 da. I'm trying to do this in a new way. It's visible. Don't bother right now. Da, da, da. All right, capture method. No, automatic. Window title match. Window title must match. Sorry, just trying to figure this out. Properties. Maybe application? No. Image? No. I'll get this eventually. Media source? No. Okay, so now with that, I can filter. How do I crop this? I've done this before, I swear. Video source, filter, crop prod, to crop values. See a red box. Box doesn't appear. Click. Okay. Let's see. Scale, filtering, blending, transform, order, color, copy, add. No. Properties. Let me check Mega Man. I have on properties for that. Automatic, match title, cancel, multi-adapter compatibility. It's a window match. Filters, close. Property, yeah. Hold on. Or is it? Properties. This is a... What type of thing is this? Window projector? No. No, it is a window capture. Okay. I just need to... Look. Out. Your log file you can using display capture. Don't use that. Only use window capture. Should not capture the taskbar. Well, that's what I'm doing. I can't. Sorry, it's taking me a bit to figure out. No, it's gotta be a window capture. I wonder why that's the only one that it wants to capture. That's weird. Don't make this. Okay, so now let's do this. No, it still shows the taskbar. Hmm. Alright, so I guess we're not doing that because I cannot figure out how to hide everything else. Oh well. Oh well, oh well, oh well. Oh wait, shit. Close the window. I did not mean to do that part. Do. Alright, let's make this a bit smaller. And then let's at long last begin after all of that nonsense. I deeply apologize. I was trying to make it more displayable, but you know what? If it's not gonna cooperate, might as well not even worry about it, you know? Alright, let's begin. Of Studying Scarlet, Part 1. Let me zoom in a bit. Yeah. Being a reprint from the reminiscences of John H. Watson, M.D., late of the Army Medical Department. Chapter 1. Mr. Sherlock Holmes. In the year 1878, I took my degree of Doctor of Medicine of the University of London, proceeded to Netley to go through the course prescribed for surgeons in the army. Having completed my studies there, I duly attached to the 5th North Nor. Oh God, already, God damn it! I bet this would be easier if I was British. Northumberland Fulisters as assistant surgeon. The regiment was stationed in India at the time. Before I could join it, the Second Afghan War had broken out. On landing at Bombay, I learned that my corps had advanced through the passes already deep in enemy country. I followed, however, with many other officers who were in the same situation as myself, succeeded in reaching in Chafdar, or Kandahar. God damn it. Where I found my regiment, and once entered upon my new duties. The campaign brought honors and promotion to many, but to me it had nothing but misfortune and disaster. I was removed from my brigade. How did I mess up that word? That's one I know. I was removed from my brigade and attached to Berkshire, with whom I served at the fatal battle of my one. This might have already been a bad idea. There I was struck on the shoulder by a Jezebel bullet, which shattered the bone and grazed at the subclavian artery. I should have fallen into the hands of the murderer Ghazis, had it not been for the devotion and courage shown by Murray, my orderly, who threw me across a pack horse and succeeded in bringing me safely to British lines. Worn with pain and weak from the prolonged hardship which I had undergone, I was removed with a great train of wounded sufferers to the base hospital at Peshawar. Here I rallied, and had already improved so far as to be able to walk around the ward, and to bask a little upon the veranda. when I was struck down by an erratic fever, the curse of our Indian possessions. For months my life was despaired of, and when at last I came to myself, my normal speaking voice is not doing this very well. Let's try something different. For months my life was despaired of, and when I came to myself and became inconvalescent, I was so weak and anemic that a medical board determined that not a day should be lost in sending me back to England. I was dispatched accordingly in the troop ship Ortons, or Nets, something like that, and landed a month later at, at Portsmouth of Jetry with my health irrevertibly ruined, but with permission from the parental government, or paternal, oh God, these words, government to spend in the next 9 months in attempting to improve it. I had neither their kith nor kin in England, and therefore as free as air, or as free as an income of 11 shillings and sixpence a day will permit a man to be. Under such circumstance, I naturally gravitated to London, that great cesspool into which all the lodgers and idlers in the empire are irresistibly drained. There I stayed for some time at a private hotel in the Strand, leading a comfortless, meaningless existence, and spending such money as I had considerably more freely than I ought. So alarmingly did the state of my finances become that I soon realized I must either leave the metropolis and rustate somewhere in the country, or I must make a complete alteration in my style of living. Choosing the latter alternative, I began by making up my mind to leave the hotel, to take my quarters in some less prestigious or pretentious, in some less pretentious and less expensive domicile. On the very day that I had come to this conclusion, I was standing at the God, these names, Criterion Bar, when someone tapped me on the shoulder. Turning round, I recognized young Stanford, who had been a dresser under me at Bart's. The sight of a friendly face in the great wilderness of London is a pleasant thing indeed to a lonely man. In old days, Stanford had been a particular crony of mine, but now I hailed him with enthusiasm, and he, in his turn, appeared to be delighted to see me. In the exuberance of my joy, I asked him to lunch with me at the Holborn, and we started off together there in a hansom. That's a weird word. What does that mean? A two-wheeled horse-drawn carriage accommodating two inside while the driver seated behind. That is so weird looking. So used to the driver being in front. "Whatever have you been doing with yourself, Watson?" he asked in his undisguised wonder as we rattled through the crowded London streets. "You are as thin as lath and as proud as a nut." I gave him a short sketch of my adventures, and had hardly concluded it by the time we reached our destination. "Poor devil!" he said. Commissioner. Oof. What is that word? Commissionatingly. There is too many conjugations on that. What does this mean? To feel or express sympathy, condole, commiserates with them on their loss. Transitive verb to feel or express compassion. Why are there so many conjugations on that? After he had listened to my misfortune, what are you up to now? I'm looking for lodgings, I answered, trying to solve the problem as to whether it is possible to get comfortable rooms at a reasonable price. That's a strange thing, remarked my companion. You are the second man today that's used that expression to me. And who was the first? I asked. A fellow who's working at the chemical laboratory up at the hospital. He was bemoaning himself in the morning because he could not get someone to go halves with him in some nice rooms which he had found, and which were too much for his purse. By Jove, I cried, if he really wants someone to share rooms and the expense, I am the very man for him. I should prefer having a partner to being alone. Young Stanford looked rather strangely at me over his wineglass. You don't know Sherlock Holmes yet, he said. Perhaps you would not care for him as your constant companion. Why, what is there against him? Oh, I didn't say there was anything against him. He is a little queer in his ideas, an enthusiast in some branches of science. As far as I know, he's a decent fellow. A medical student, I suppose, said I. No, I have no idea what he intends to go in for. I believe he's well up in the anatomy, and he's a first-class chemist, but as far as I know, he's never taken any systematic medical classes. His studies are very desultory and eccentric, but he amasses a lot of out-of-the-way knowledge, which would astonish his professors. Did you never ask him what he was going in for? No, he's not a man that's easy to draw out, though he can be communicated enough when the fancy seizes him. I should like to meet him, I said. If I am to lodge with anyone, I should prefer a man of studious and quiet habits. I am not strong enough yet to stand much noise or excitement. I have had enough of both in Afghanistan to last me over the remainder of my natural existence. How could I meet this friend of yours? He's sure to be at the laboratory, returned my companion. He either avoids the place for weeks, or he works there from morning to night. If you like, we shall drive round towards after luncheon. Certainly, I answered, and the conversation drifted away into other channels. As we made our way to the hospital after leaving the Holborn, Stanford gave me a very few more particulars about the man whom I proposed to take as a fellow lodger. You mustn't blame me if you do not get on with him, he said. I know nothing more of him than I have learned from meeting him occasionally in the laboratory. He proposed this arrangement, so you must not hold me you proposed this arrangement, so you must not hold me responsible. If we don't get on, it will be easy to part company, I answered. It seems to me, Stanford, I added, looking hard at my companion, you have some reason for washing your hands of this matter. Is this fellow's temper so formidable, or what is it? Don't be mealy-mouthed about it. It is not easy to express the inexpressible, he answered with a laugh. Ours is a little too scientific for my taste. It approaches to cold-bloodedness. I could imagine his giving a friend a little pinch of the latest vegetable alkaloid, not out of malevolence, you understand, but simply out of the spirit of inquiry in order to have an accurate idea of the effects. To do him justice, I think it would take it himself with the same readiness. He appears to have a passion for the definite and exact knowledge. Very right, too. Yes, but it may be pushed to excess. When it comes to beating the subjects in the dissecting room with a stick, what the fuck? Why would you do that? It certainly takes rather a bizarre shape. Beating the subjects? Yes, to verify how far bruises may be produced after death, I saw him with my own eyes. And yet you say he is not a medical student. No, heavens know what the what the object of his studies are, but here we are, and you must form your own impressions about it." As he spoke, he turned down a narrow lane and passed through a small side door, which opened into a wing of the great hospital. It was familiar ground to me. I needed no guiding as we ascended the bleak stone staircase, made our way down the long corridor with a vista of whitewashed and dun-colored walls. Near the further end, a low arched passage branched away from it and led to the chemical laboratory. This was a lofty chamber, lined and littered with countless bottles. Low tables were scattered about, which bristled with retorts and test tubes. With retorts? That's a weird one. And little Bunsen lamps with their blue flickering flames. There was only one student in the room, who was bending over a distant table, absorbed in his work. At the sound of our steps, he glanced round and sprang to his feet with a cry of pleasure. I found it! I found it!" he shouted to my companion, running towards us with a test tube in his hand. Gotta get a good voice to this. Or Finn. No. That's an older one. Let me see. I've found a reagent which is God, a difficult word right off the bat. Precipescent by hemoglobin and by nothing else. Had he discovered a gold mine greater than delight, it could not have shown upon his features. Story of Ghost Cat and Truck Son. Hi, Kathy. How you doing? We're reading today. I'm glad you could show up. We're reading Sherlock Holmes. Okay, Nurse broke my phone though, so using this big tablet. Aw, that sucks. Well, I'm just reading the very first Sherlock Holmes book, A Study in Scarlet. So maybe that will interest you. I'm doing voices and everything. She broke it because me wasn't paying attention. I don't think she should have had the jurisdiction to do that, but well, I hope this entertains you. Robot voice with it. I do not have text to speech. This is the best I can do. Dr. Watson, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, said Stamford, introducing us. How are you? He asked cordially, gripping my hand with a strength for which I had hardly given him credit. Your mic doing a robot voice for you, buddy. Oh, shit. Hold on. This sound better? This isn't a sci-fi novel, so robot voice doesn't really gel with it. Awesome, awesome, awesome. What, were you enjoying the robot? Look, if I could do it actively without me worrying that it was affecting my sound quality, I would. But I don't have any devices like that. And I don't want it to carry over into my other stuff. Robot Sherlock Holmes. It was elementary, my dear Watson. Oh, right. Sorry. Sorry. I don't know why that happened. I'm trying to figure out a voice for him. I don't know why my mic might muted for a bit there. Am I back? Can I be heard again? Get him! Ah! Oop, he alive. Well, let's correct mistakes. There, now he did. Anyways, yeah, I'm trying to figure out a good voice for Holmes. There's got to be one that I can do a lot. My Dracula voice is definitely out of the question. Anything too high pitched will just not pervade the seriousness of the character. Only, and any execution needs to be quite spot on, so all Aussie voices or sailor voices won't fit. I'm trying to keep up with the Giroux voice for Holmes is a bit too overly dramatic. Hmm. Of course, I can't just give him a ridiculous voice like Mosherige. Actually, so I thought of my Maximilian Pegasus voice. I'm gonna try that for a moment. See how it goes. You got one? Why have I lost a lot of frames here? What do you got suggested? Sorry. hiccuped a bit. Coruscant from Assassination Classroom. I can't do that kind of voice. I can't do Koro Sensei. He's a bit too chipper for my capabilities. I'm gonna try the Pegasus voice here. How are you? He asked cordially, gripping my hand with a strength for which I should hardly have given him credit. You have been to Afghanistan, I perceive. How on earth did you know that? I asked in astonishment. What? What am I stopping? The Pegasus voice? I'm waiting. Tell me. Tell me the word things. I don't know what you want. Oh, okay. You're angry at autocorrect. Yeah, autocorrect doesn't really notice foreign names a lot of the time. Bad autocorrect. Should I continue? You gotta teach it. You gotta manually add it to your device's vocabulary by right-clicking and clicking Add to Dictionary. Yes, continue. Me time. Hate up autocorrect. How on earth did you know that? I asked in astonishment. Never mind, said he, chuckling to himself. The question is now is about hemoglobin. No doubt you see the significance of this discovery of mine. Ah, no, Pegasus doesn't fit. Let's try. It is interesting. Chemically, no doubt, I answered. But practically, why, man, it is the most practical medical legal discovery for years. Don't you see that it gives us infallible tests for bloodstains? Come over here now. He seized me by the coat sleeves in his eagerness and drew me over to the table at which he had been working. Let us harvest some fresh blood, he said, digging a long bodkin into his finger and drawing out the resulting drop of blood in a chemical bouteille. Now I shall add this small quantity of blood to a liter of water. You perceive that the resulting mixture has the appearance of pure water. The proportions of blood cannot be more than 1 in a millionth. I have no doubt, however, that we shall be able to obtain the characteristic reaction. As he spoke, he threw into the vessel a few white crystals, then added some drops of a transparent fluid. In an instant, the contents assumed a dull mahogany color, and a brownish dust was perceived in the bottom of the glass jar. What? A Bakugo voice? I haven't tried that, but that sounds very shouty. just, just Sherlock Holmes yelling everything. Like, we need to be quiet! I should gonna add more curse words. And nerd! The word nerd actually isn't invented yet. Fun fact. So, here's the thing. The first time the word nerd was ever used in a book was the name of a creature in a Dr. Seuss book called If I Ran the Zoo, released in 1950. The book we're reading today was released in, I believe, 1882. Let me double check. Study in Scarlet. 1888. It shall be invented by Sherlock Bakugo. Anyways, where was I? Ha ha! He cried, clapping his hands and looking as delighted as a child with a new toy. What do you think of that? It seems to be a delicate test, I remarked. Beautiful, beautiful! The old Garrison test was very clumsy and uncertain. So with the microscope examinations for blood corpuscles, the latter is valueless if the stains are a few hours old. Now this appears to act well whether the blood is old or new. Had this test been invented, there are a few hundreds of men now walking the earth who would long ago have paid penalties for their crimes. He's bit his tongue, I think. I haven't yet, but that is a possibility. Indeed, I muttered. Criminal cases are... I'm trying to get a good voice for this. Criminal cases are continuously hinging upon that one point. A man is suspected of crimes, months perhaps after he has been committed. His linen or clothes are examined, brown stains discovered upon them. Are they blood stains, or mud stains, or rust stains, or fruit stains? Or what are they? That is a question which has puzzled many an expert. And why? Because there's no reliable test. Now we have the Sherlock Holmes test. There'll no longer be any difficulty. All right. I hope you have a great day, Kat. I hope you get your phone sorted out. I thank you for stopping by. Goodbye, Sherlock Bakugo. His eyes fairly glittered as he spoke, and he put his hands over his heart as he bowed as if to some applauding crowd conjured up to his imaginations. You are to be congratulated, I remarked, considerably surprised at his enthusiasm. This was the case of von Beschot at Frankfurt last year. He would certainly have hung had this test been in existence. Then there's some Mason of Bodford, and the notorious Muller, and Lafrut of Montpellier, and Sampson of New Orleans, or of New Orleans. Is that one Orleans or Orleans? They're spelled the same, but I don't know which pronunciation they're using. Or Orleans, could be that too. I could name a score of cases which would have been indecisive. You seem to be a walking calendar of crime, said Stanford with a laugh. You must start a paper on these lines. Call it Police News of the Past. Very interesting. Reading it might be made too, remarked Sherlock Holmes, taking a small piece of plaster under the prick of his finger. I have to be careful. I was having something good here for a moment. I have to be careful. No, that wasn't it. I have to be careful, he continued, turning to me with a smile, for I dabble with poisons a good deal. He held out his hands as he spoke, and I noticed it was all molted over with similar pieces of plaster, discolored with strong acids. We came here on business, said Stamford, sitting down at a high three-legged stool, pushing another one in my direction with his foot. My friend here wants to take diggings, and you were complaining that you could get no one to go halves with you. I thought it'd be better to bring you together. Sherlock Holmes seemed delighted at the idea, sharing his room with me. I have my eye on a suite in Baker Street, he said, which would suit us down to the ground. If you don't mind the smell of strong tobacco, I hope. I always smoke ships myself, I answered. That's enough, or that's good enough. I generally have chemicals about and occasionally do experiments. Would that annoy you? By no means, no. Let me see. What are my other shortcomings? I get in the dumps at the time, and don't open my mouth for days on end. You must not think I'm sulky when I do that. Just let me alone, and I'll soon be right. What have you to confess now? It's just as well for two fellows to know the worst of one another before they begin to live together. I laughed at the cross-examination. I keep a bullpup, I said, and I object to rows because my nerves are shaken, and I get up at all sorts of ungodly hours. I'm extremely lazy. I have another set of vices when I'm well, but those are the principal ones at present. Do you include violin playing in your category of rows? He asked anxiously. It depends on the player, I answered. A well-played violin is a treat for the gods. A badly played one. Oh, that's right, he cried with a merry laugh. I think we may consider we may consider the thing as settled. That is, if the rooms are agreeable to you. When shall we see them? Call for me at noon tomorrow, and we'll go together and settle everything, he answered. All right, noon exactly, said I, shaking his hand. We left him working among his chemicals, and we walked together towards my hotel. By the way, I asked suddenly, stopping and turning towards Stamford, how the deuce did he know that I came from Afghanistan? My companion smiled an inimical smile. That's just one of his particularities, he said, as a good many people have wanted to know how he finds things out. Oh, a mystery is it? I cried, rubbing my hands together. This is very piquant. I am much obligated to you for bringing us together. The proper study of mankind is man, you know. You must study him then, Stamford said, as he bade me goodbye. You'll find him a knotty problem, though. I wager he learns more about you than you about him. Goodbye. Goodbye, I answered, and strolled on to my hotel, considerably interested in my new acquaintance. I had to take a swing of water. Went down a bit rough, because of course it did. Hold on. All right. Chapter 2. The Science of Deduction. We met next day as he arranged, and inspected the rooms at number 20 221B, Baker Street, of which he had spoken at our meeting. They consisted of a couple of comfortable bedrooms, a single large airy sitting room, cheerfully furnished and illuminated by two broad windows. Sorry, excuse me. So desirable in every way were the apartments, and so moderate did the terms seem when divided between us, that the bargain was concluded upon the spot, and we at once entered into possession. That very evening I moved my things round from the hotel, and on the following morning Sherlock Holmes followed me with several boxes and portmanteaus. That is a weird word. What does that mean? A large trunk or suitcase typically made of stiff leather and opening into two equal parts. It's also a word blending the sounds of combining the meanings of two others. For example, motel from motor and hotel, or brunch from breakfast or lunch. Oh, that's cool. For a day or two we were busily employed in unpacking and laying out on our property to the best advantage. That done, we gradually began to settle down and accommodate ourselves to our new surroundings. Holmes was certainly not a difficult man to live with. He was quiet in his ways, and his habits were regular. It was rare for him to be up at 10 at night, and he invariably breakfasted and gone out before I rose in the morning. Sometimes he spent his days at the chemical laboratory, sometimes in the dissecting room, and occasionally in long walks, which appeared to take him in the lowest portions of the city. Nothing could exceed his energy when the working fit was upon him, but now and again in a reaction would seize him, and for days on end he would lie on the sofa in the sitting room, hardly uttering a word or moving a muscle from morning to night. And on these occasions I have noticed some dreamy, vacant expressions in his eyes that I might not have suspected him of being addicted to the use of narcotics, but not the temperance and cleanliness of his whole life forbidden such a notion. As the weeks went by, my interest in him and my curiosity as to his aims in life gradually deepened and increased. His very person and appearance were such as to strike the attention of the most casual observer. In height he was rather over 6 feet, and exceptionally lean, that he seemed to be considerably taller. His eyes were sharp and piercing, save during those intervals of torpor to which I have alluded, and his thin, hawk-like nose gave his whole expression an air of alertness and decision. His chin, too, had the prominence and squareness which mark the man of determination. His hands were invariably blotted with ink, stained with chemicals, yet he possessed by an extraordinary delicacy of touch, as I frequently had occasion to observe when I watched him manipulating his fragile philosophical instruments. The reader may set me down as a hopeless busybody, when I confess how much this man stimulated my curiosity, and how often I endeavored to break through the what does this word mean? Reticence. Reticence. The quality of being reticent or reserved. Which he showed on all that concerned himself. Before pronouncing judgment, however, be it remembered how objectiveless my life, and how little there was to engage my attention. My health forbade me from venturing out, unless the weather was exceptionally genial. I had no friends who would call upon me, and break the monotony of my daily existence. Under these circumstances, I eagerly hailed the little mystery which hung around my companion, and spent much of my time in endeavoring to unravel it. He was not studying medicine. He had himself, in reply to a question, confirmed Stamford's opinion upon that point. Neither did he appear to have pursued any course of reading which might fit him for a degree in science, or any a recognizable portal which would give him an entrance to the learned world. Yet his zeal for certain studies was remarkable. Within eccentric limits, his knowledge was so extraordinary, ample, and minute that his observations have fairly astounded me. Surely no man that would work so hard to or attain such precise information unless he had some definitive end in view. The sultry readers are seldom remarkable for the exactness of their learning. No man burdens his mind with small matters unless he has very good reason for doing so. His ignorance was as remarkable as his knowledge. Of contemporary literature, philosophy, and politics he appeared to know next to nothing. Upon my quoting Thomas Carlyle, he inquired in the naivest way who he might be and what he had done. My surprise reached a climax. However, when I found incidentally that he was arrogant of the Copernican theory and the Copernican theory and the composition of the solar system, that any civilized human being in this 19th century should not be aware that the earth traveled around the sun appeared to be to me such an extraordinary fact that I could hardly realize it. You appear to be astonished, he said, smiling at my expression of surprise. Not that I do not. Now that I do know, I shall do my best to forget it. To forget it! You see, he explained, I consider that a man in his brain originally is like a little empty attic. You have to stock it with some furniture as you choose. A fool takes in all the lumber of every sort that he comes across. So the knowledge which might be useful to him get crowded out, and at best is jumbled up in a lot of other things that he has a difficulty in laying his hands upon it. Now the skilful workman is very careful indeed as to what he takes into his brain attic. He will have nothing but the tools which may help in doing his work, but these he has a large assortment, and all in the most perfect order. It is a mistake to think that the little room has elastic walls, and to extend to any extent. Depend upon it, there comes a time when every addition of knowledge you forgets something that you knew before. It is the highest importance, therefore, not to have useless facts elbowing out of the useful ones. But the solar system, I protested. What the deuce is it to me? He interrupted me impatiently. You say that we go around the sun. If we went around the moon, it would not make a penny's worth of difference to me or my work. I was on the point of asking him what that work might be, but something in his manner showed me that the question would be an unwelcome one. He pondered over our short conversation, however, and endeavored to draw my deductions from it. He said he would acquire no knowledge which did not bear upon his object. Therefore, all the knowledge which he possessed was such as he would be useful to him. I enumerated in my own mind all the various points upon which he had shown me that he is exceptionally well informed. I even took a pencil and jotted them down. I could not help smiling at the document, for which I completed. It ran in this way: Sherlock Holmes, his limits. Knowledge of literature, nil. Philosophy, nil. Astronomy, nil. Politics, feeble. Botany, veritable. Well up in belladonna, opium, and poison. Is in generally, knowing nothing of practical gardening. Geology, practical but limited. Tells at a first glance different soils from each other. After walks he showed me splashes upon his trousers and told me that their color consists is what part of London he has received them. Chemistry, profound. Astronomy, accurate but unsystematic. Sensational literature, immense. He appears to know every detail of every horror perpetrated in the century. Plays the violin well, is an excellent single-stick player, boxer and swordsman, has a practical knowledge of British law. When I had got so far in my list, I threw it in the fire in despair. If I can only find what the fellow is driving at by by recounseling all of these accomplishments and discovering a calling which needs them all, I said to myself, I may as well give up the attempt at once. I see that I have alluded above to his powers upon the violin. They were very remarkable, but as eccentric at all his other accomplishments, that he could play pieces and difficult pieces. I knew well, because at my request he had played me some of the Mendelssohn Lieder and other favorites. When I left to him, however, he would seldom produce any music or attempt any recognizable or recognized air. Leaning back in his armchair of an evening, he would close his eyes and scrape carelessly at the fiddle, which was thrown across his knee. Sometimes the chords were soaring and melancholy. Occasionally they were frantic and cheerful. Clearly they reflected the thoughts which possessed him, but whether the music aided those thoughts, or whether the playing was simply the result of a whim or fancy, was more than I could determine. I might have rebelled against these exasperated solos had it not been he usually terminated them by playing in quick succession a whole series of my favorite airs as a slight composition for the trial upon my patience. During the first week or so we had no callers. I had begun to think that my companion was as friendless as man as I was myself. Presently, however, I found that he had many acquaintances, and those in different classes of society. There was one little sallow-faced, dark-eyed fellow, or sallow rat-faced, dark-eyed fellow, who was introduced to me as Mr. Lestrade, who came 3 or 4 times in a single week. One morning a young girl, fashionably dressed, and stayed for half an hour or more. The same afternoon brought a grey-headed, seedy visitor, looking like a Jew pedlar, who appeared to me to be much excited, and who was closely followed by a slip-shod elderly woman. On another occasion an old white-haired gentleman had an interview with my companion, and on another a railway porter in his velveteen uniform. When any of these nondescript individuals put in an appearance, Sherlock Holmes used to beg for the use of the sitting-room, and I would retire to my bedroom. He always apologized to me for putting me into this inconvenience. Hello, Doppel. Sorry I'm late to class. I was at a car crash. The nurse will give me an ice pack. What link? I'm gonna need a bit more context. Crow? Just go on, okay? So, a little explanation of what I'm currently doing. Actually, no, pause that. Are you okay? Do you maybe need some more medical attention? You're okay? Are you sure? I just want to be sure. Alright, so I'm currently reading Sherlock Holmes as the very first one, called A Study in Scarlet. It's a reading stream today. I do voices. I've been trying to get one that fits Holmes himself. Been a bit difficult. Yes. I'd have to break into Aza's library, so for now I'm just on this sheet of paper. At least I'm no longer on the streets ever since getting this overlay. Now, where was I? Right, here. I have to use this room as a place of business, he said, and these people are my clients. Again I have an opportunity of asking him a point-blank question, and again my delicacy prevented me from forcing another man to confide in me. I imagined at the time that he had some strong reason for not alluding to it, but he soon dispelled the idea by coming round to the subject of his own accord. It was upon the 4th of May, as I have good reason to remember, that I rose somewhere earlier than usual and found that Sherlock Holmes had not yet finished his breakfast. The landlady had become so accustomed to my late habits that my place had not been laid nor my coffee prepared. With the unreasonable petulance of mankind, I rang the bell and gave a curt imitation that I was, that says imitation, but that's weird, that I was ready. Then I picked up a magazine from the table and attempted to while away the time with it, while my companion munched silently at his toast. One of the articles had a pencil mark at the heading, and I naturally began to run my eye through it. It is a somewhat ambitious title, was The Book of Life, and attempted to show how much of an observant man might learn by an accurate, systematic examination of all that came in his way. It struck me as being a remarkable mixture of shrewdness and absurdity. The reasoning was close and intense, but the deductions appeared to be far-fetched and exaggerated. The writer claimed by a momentary expression, a twitch of a muscle, a glance of an eye to fathom a man's inmost thoughts. Deceit, according to him, was an impossibility in the case of one trained to observation and analysis. His conclusions were as infallible as to many proportions of Icalid, or Elid? I don't know what that is. Yeah, fancy words. Let's see what that word is. Icalid was an ancient Greek mathematician active as a geometer and logician, considered the father of geometry. Known for the 5 elements. So startling would his results appear to the uninitiated, that until they learned the processes by which he had arrived at them, they might as well consider him as a necromancer. From a drop of water, said the writer, a logician would infer the possibility of an Atlantic or Nigeria, without having seen or heard of one or the other. So all life is a great chain, the nature of which is known whenever we are shown a single link of it. Like all other arts, the science of deduction and analysis is one which can only be acquired by long and patient study, nor is life long enough to allow any mortal to attain the highest possible perfection of it, before turning into those mortal or moral and mental aspects of the matter which present the greatest difficulties. Let the inquirer begin by mastering one more elementary problem. Let him, on meeting a fellow mortal, learn at a glance to distinguish the history of that man, and the trade or profession to which he belongs. Provided that such an exercise may seem, it sharpens the faculties of observation, and teaches one where to look and what to look for, by a man's fingernails, by his coat sleeve, by his boots, by his trouser knees, and by the calluses on his forefingers and thumb, by his expression, by his shirt cuffs. By each of these things a man's calling is plainly revealed. That all united should fail to enlighten the competent inquirer is in any case is almost inconceivable. What ineffable twaddle! I cried, slapping the magazine down on the table. I have never read such rubbish in my life. What is it? Said Sherlock Holmes. Why, this article, I said, pointing at it with my egg spoon. Egg spoon? Yes, I have a spoon just for this egg. Alright, everyone, let's get our egg spoons. As I sat down to my breakfast, I see that you have read it, since you have marked it. I don't deny that it is smartly written. It irritates me, though. It is evidently the theory of some armchair lounger who evolves all these neat little paradoxes in the secularism of his own study. It is not practical. I should like to see him clamp down in a third-class carriage on the underground and ask to give the trade of all his fellow travellers. I lay 1,000 to 1 against him. You would lose your money. Sherlock Holmes remarked calmly. As for the article, I wrote it myself. You! Yes, I have a turn both for observation and for deduction. The theories which I have expressed there, and which appear to you to be so chimerical, are really extremely practical, so practical that I depend upon them for my bread and cheese. And how? I asked involuntarily. Well, I have a trade of my own. I suppose I am the only one in the world. Well, I'm a consulting detective, if you can understand what that is. Here in London, we have a lot of government detectives and lots of private ones. When these fellows are at a fancy, they come to me. Or when these fellows are at a fault, they come to me. I manage to put them on the right scent. Yeah, egg spoons, I swear. Sounds so silly. They lay all the evidence before me, and I am genuinely able, by the help of my knowledge of history of crime, to set them straight. There is a strong family resemblance about misdeeds, and if you have all the details of thousands at your fingers, it is odd if you can't unravel the thousands in first. Lestrade is a well-known detective. He got himself into a fog recently over a forgery case, and that was what brought him here. And those other people, they were mostly sent by private inquiry agencies. They're all people who are in trouble about something and want a little enlightening. I listen to their stories, and they listen to my comments, and then I pocket my fee. And do you mean to say, I said, that without leaving your room, you can unravel some knot which other men can make nothing of, although they have seen every detail for themselves? Quite so. I have a kind of intuition that way. Now and again, a case turns up which is a little more complex, and I have to bustle about and see things with my own eyes. You see, I have a lot of special knowledge which I apply to the problem, and with faculties matters wonderfully. Those rules of deduction laid down in that article would arouse your scorn are invaluable to me in this practical work. Observation with me is second nature. You appeared to be surprised when I told you on our first meeting that you come from Afghanistan. You were told, no doubt. Nothing of the sort. I knew you came from Afghanistan, from long habit of the train of thoughts ran so swiftly through my mind that I arrived at the conclusion without concession of intermediate steps. There were such steps, however. The train of reasoning ran. He was a gentleman of a medical type, but with an air of a military man, clearly an army doctor then. He has just come from the tropics, for his face is dark. This is not a natural tint for his skin, for his wrists are fair. He has undergone hardship and sickness, as his haggard face says clearly. His left arm has been injured. I'm liking this voice for Holmes. This is working. He holds it in a stiff and unnatural manner. Where in the tropics could an English army doctor have seen much hardship and got his arm wounded? Clearly in Afghanistan. The whole train of thought did not occupy a second. I then remarked that you came from Afghanistan, and you were astonished. It is simple enough as you explain it, I said, smiling. You remind me of Edgar Allan Poe's Dupin. I have no idea that such an individual could exist outside of stories. Sherlock Holmes rose and lit his pipe. No doubt you think that you are complimenting me and compare me to Dupin, he observed. Now, in my opinion, Dupin was a very inferior fellow. The trick of his of breaking in on his friend's thoughts were apropos remark after a quarter of an hour's silence, really very showy and superficial. He had very analytical genius, no doubt, but he was by no means such a phenomenon as Poe appear to imagine. I'm gonna have to go now, so bye, Doppel. This was beautiful. Probably the first time I found reading fun, entertaining. Thanks for the stream today. Yeah, no problem. I upload my videos to YouTube as VOD, so if you want to hear the start or the rest of this, it'll be up there. But I'm glad you could come on by, and I'm glad you had fun. And have a great day, and I hope you'll be okay. Alright, bye. Where was I? Ah, here. Have you read... Oh boy, this is a name. Gaboriau's works, I asked. Did Lecoq come up in your ideas of Does Lecoq come up to your idea as a detective? Sherlock Holmes sniffed sardonically. Lecoq was a miserable blunder, he said in an angry voice. He had only one thing to recommend him, and that was his energy. That book made him positively ill. The question was how to identify an unknown prisoner. I could have done it in 24 hours. Lecoq took 6 months or so. I might have made a textbook for detectives to teach them what to avoid. I felt rather indignant at having two characters whom I admired and treated in this cavalier style. I walked over to the window and stood looking out into the busy street. This fellow may be very clever, I told myself, but he is certainly very conceited. There was no crimes and no criminals in these days, he said, querulously. Let's look up that word. In a complaining way, especially using a weak, high voice. What is the use of having brains in our profession? I know well that I have it in me to make my name famous. No man lives or has ever lived who has brought the same amount of study and natural talent to the dedication of crime which I have done. What is the result? There is no crime to detect, or at most some blundering villain with a motive so transparent that even a Scotland Yard official can see through it. I was still so annoyed as bumped to a stop of conversation. I thought it best to change the topic. I wonder what that fellow is looking for, I asked, pointing to a stalwart, plainly dressed individual who was walking slowly down the other side of the street, looking anxiously at the numbers. He had a large blue envelope in his hand, and was evidently the bearer of a message. He means for the retired sergeants of the Marines, said Sherlock Holmes. Rag and bounce, I thought to myself. He knows that I could not verify his guess. The thought had hardly passed through my mind when the man whom he was watching caught sight of the number on our door and ran rapidly across the road. We heard a loud knock, a deep voice below, and a heavy step ascending the stairs. For Mr. Sherlock Holmes, he said, stepping into the room, handing my friend the letter. Here was an opportunity of taking the conceit out of him. He little thought of this when he made that random shot. May I ask, my lad, I said, in the blandest voice, what your trade may be? Commissaire, or commissionary, sir, he said gruffly. Uniform away for repairs. And you were? I asked with a slightly malevolent glance at my companion. A sergeant, Sir Royal Marine Light Infantry, sir. No answer. Right, sir. He clicked his heels together, raised his hands in a salute. Oh wait, hold on. That was meant for the kid. A sergeant, sir. Royal From Marine Light Infantry, sir. No answer? Right, sir. He clicked his heels together, raised his hands in a salute, and was gone. Chapter 3. The Lauriston Gardens Mystery. I confess that I was considerably startled by this fresh proof that the practical nature of my companion's theories. My respect for his powers of analysis, however, my respect for his powers of analysis increased wondrously. There still remained some lurking suspicion in my mind. However, that whole thing was prearranged episode, intended to dazzle me, though what earthly object he could have in taking me in was past my comprehension. When I looked at him, he finished reading the note, and his eyes had assumed the vacant, lackluster expression which showed mental abstraction. "How in the world did you deduce that?" I asked. "Deduce what?" he said, petulantly. "Why, that he was a retired sergeant of the Marines." "I have no time for trifles," he answered briskly. Then, with a smile, "Excuse my rudeness. You broke the thread of my thought, and perhaps it is as well. You actually were not able to see that man was a sergeant of the Marines?" "No, indeed." "It was easier than you know. But then to explain why I know it. If you were asked to prove that two and two made four, you might find some difficulty. And yet you're quite sure of the fact. Even across the street, I could see a great blue anchor tattooed on the back of the fellow's hand. That smacked of the sea. He had a military carriage, however, and regulation side whiskers. Then we have the Marine. He was a man with some amount of self-importance, and a certain air of command. He may have observed the way in which he had held his hands and swung his cane. A steadily respectable middle-aged man, too. On the face of him, all facts led me to believe he would have been a sergeant." "Wonderful!" I'm too immature for this. This is getting added to the list. I didn't finish it. I was too busy laughing. "Wonderful!" I ejaculated. Alright. Sorry, I was busy laughing. I swear to God it says that. That is ridiculous. Let's try this all the way through. "Wonderful!" I ejaculated. "Commonplace," said Holmes, though I thought from his expression that he was pleased by my evident surprise and admiration. I said just now that there are no criminals. It appears that I am wrong. Look at this." He threw me over the note which the commissioner had brought. Why, I cried as I cast my eyes over it. This is terrible! It doesn't seem to be a little out of the common. Or it does seem to be a little out of the common. He remarked calmly, would you mind reading it to me aloud? This is what the letter which I read to him. Alright, someone else's, I'm going to do a different voice for this. My dear Mr. Sherlock Holmes, there have been a bad business during the night at 3 Lutterstone Garden, over on Brixton Road. Our man on the beat, it's all like, that was about 2 in the morning, and the house was an empty one. Suspected that something was amiss. He found the door open, and in the front room which is bare furniture, discovered the body of a gentleman, well dressed and having cards in his pockets bearing the name of Edward J. Jabber, Cleveland, Ohio, USA. There has been no robbery, nor is there any evidence as to how the man met his death. There are marks of blood in the room, and there is no wound upon his person. We are at a loss at how we came to the empty house. Indeed, the whole affair is a puzzler. If you came around to the house any time before 12, you will find me there. I have left everything in status quo until I hear from you. If you are unable to come, I shall give you full details. It would estimate it a great kindness if you would favour me with your opinion. Yours faithfully, Tobias Gregson. Gregson is the smartest of the Scotland Yarders. My friend remarked. He and Lestrade are a pick of a bad lot. They are both quick and energetic, but controversial. Shockingly so. They have their knives into one another too. They're as jealous as a pair of professional beauties. There will be no fun over this case if they are both put on the scent. Needs water. I was amazed at the calm way in which he rippled on. Surely there is not a moment to be lost, I cried. Shall I go and order you a cab? I'm not sure whether I should go. I'm the most incurably lazy devil that I ever stood in shoe leather. That is, when the fit is on me. For I can be spry enough at times. What it is just such a chance as you've been longing for. My dear friend, what does it matter to me? Supposing I unravel the whole matter, you may be sure that Gregson, Lestrade and Company will pocket all the credit that comes from being an unofficial personage. But he begs you to help him. Yes, he knows that I am his superior and acknowledges it to me, but he would cut his tongue out before he would own it to any third person. However, we may as well go and have a look. I shall work it out on my own hook. I may have laughed at them if I have nothing else. Come on. He hustled on his overcoat and bustled about in a way that showed that an energetic fit had superseded the apathetic one. Get your hat, he said. You wish me to come? Yes, if I have nothing better to do. A minute later, we were both in a hansom driving furiously for Brixton Road. It was a foggy, cloudy morning, and a dun-covered veil hung over the housetops, looking like the reflection of mud-colored streets beneath. My companion was in the best of spirits, and prattled away from Cremorna's fiddle and the difference between Duravius and Eminata. As for myself, I was silent, for the dull weather and the melancholy business upon which we were engaged depressed my spirits. You don't seem to give much a thought to the matter at hand, I said at last, interrupting Holmes' musical disposition. No data yet, he answered. It is a capital mistake to theorize before you have all the evidence. It biases the judgment. You will have your data soon, I remarked, pointing with my finger. This is Brixton Road, and that is the house, if I am not very much mistaken. So it is. Stop, driver, stop. We were still 100 yards or so from it, but he insisted upon our light, and we finished our journey upon foot. Number 3, the Stargian Gardens wore an ill-omened and minatory look. It was one of the 4 in which it stood back some little way from the street, 2 being occupied and 2 being empty. The latter looked out with 3 tiers of vacant and melancholy windows, which were blank and dreary, save that here and there a "To Let" card had developed like a cat-trap upon the bleared panes. A small garden sprinkled over, which a scattered eruption of sickly plants separated each of these houses from the street, and traversed by a narrow passageway, yellowish in color, and consisting apparently of a mixture of clay and of gravel. The whole place was very sloppy from the rain which had fallen through the night. The garden was bounded by 3-foot brick walls with a fringe of wood rails upon the top, and against this wall was a leaning of a stalwart police constable, surrounded by a small knot of loafers, who craned their necks, strained their eyes in the vain hope of catching some glimpse of the proceedings within. Ooh, starting to wear on my throat. Might need to get me some more water. Ugh. Yeah, I'm gonna go get some water, so give me a moment. Alright, I'm back. Let's continue. I had imagined that Sherlock Holmes would at once have hurried into the house, plunged into a study of the mystery. Nothing appears to be further from his intentions, with an air of nonchalance, which, under the circumstances, seemed to me to, to border upon an affectation. He lounged up and down on the pavement and gazed vacantly at the ground, the sky, the opposite houses, and the line of railings. I returned his scrutiny. He proceeded slowly down the path, or rather down the fringe of grass which flanked the path, keeping his eyes riveted upon the ground. Twice he stopped, and once I saw him smile, and heard him utter an exclamation of satisfaction. There were many marks of footsteps upon the wet clay soil, but since the police had been coming and going over it, I was unable to see how my companion could hope to learn anything from it. Still, I had an extraordinary evidence of the quirkiness of his perceptive faculties, means that I had no doubt that he could see a great deal which was hidden from me. At the door of the house we were met by a tall, white-faced, flaxen-haired man with a notebook in his hand, who rushed towards us and wrung my companion's hand with effusivism. "It is indeed kind of you to come," he said. "I have had everything left untouched." "Except that," my friend answered, pointing at the pathway. "If a herd of buffalo had passed along here, there had not been a greater mess. There could not have been a greater mess. No doubt, however, you have drawn your own conclusions, Gregson, before you permitted this." I've had so much to do inside the house," the detective said evasively. "My colleague, Mr. Lestrade, is here. I relied upon him to look after this." Mr. Holmes glanced at me and raised his eyebrows sardoniously. Okay. Sorry. "With two such men as yourself, Alfred Lestrade, upon the ground, there will not be much for a third party to find out." Gregson rubbed his hands in a self-satisfied way. "I think we might have done all that we could," he answered. "Here's a queer case, though. I knew your taste for such a thing." "Did you not come here in a cab?" "No, sir." "No, Lestrade?" "No, sir." Then let us go look at the room." With which inconsequent remark he strode on into the house, followed by Gregson, whose features expressed his astonishment. A short passage, its bare planked and dusty, led into the kitchens and offices. Two doors opened out of it to the left and to the right. One of these had obviously been closed for many weeks, the other belonging to the dining room, which was the apartment in which the mysterious affairs had occurred. Holmes walked in, and I followed him, with a subdued feeling at my heart that the presence of death inspired. It was a large square room, looking all the larger with the absence of all the furniture. A vulgar flowering paper adorned the walls, but it was blotched in places with mildew, and here and there great strips had become detached and hung down, exposing the yellow plaster beneath. Outside, or opposite the door, was a showy fireplace, surmounted by the mantelpiece of imitation white marble. On one corner of this was stuck the stump of red candle wax. The solitary window was so dirty that the light was hazy and uncertain, giving a dull grey tinge to everything, which was intensified by the thick layer of dust which coated the whole apartment. All these details I had observed afterwards. At the present my attention was centred upon the single grim motionless figure which lay stretched out upon the boards, and with vacant sightless eyes staring up at the discoloured ceiling. It was that of a man almost 44 years of age, middle-sized, broad shoulders, with crisp curling black hair, a short, stubbly beard. He was dressed in a heavy broadcloth frock coat and waistcoat, with a light coloured trousers and immaculate collar and cuffs. A top hat, well brushed and trimmed, was placed upon the floor beside him. His hands were clenched, and his arms spread abroad, while his lower limbs were interlocked, as though his death struggle had been a grievous one. On his rigid face there stood an expression of horror, as it seemed to me of hatred, such as I had never seen upon a human's face. This malignant and terrible contortion, combined with the low forehead, blunt nose, and progenitorous jaw, gave the dead man a slightly simious and ape-like appearance, which, increased by his withering, unnatural posture, I have seen in death in many forms, but never has it appeared to me in a more fearsome aspect than in a dark, grimy apartment, which looked out upon one of the main arteries of the suburban London. Lestrade, lean and ferret-like as ever, was standing by the door, greeting my companion and myself. All right, now I need a good voice for Lestrade. This case, no, sounds too similar to Holmes. This case will make us a stir, sir, he remarked. It beats anything I have seen, and I am no chicken. There's no clue, said Gregson. None at all, chimed in Lestrade. Sherlock Holmes approached the body and, kneeling down, examined it intensely. Okay. You are sure there's no wound? He asked, pointing to numerous gouts and splashes of blood which lay all round. Positive, said both detectives. Then, of course, this blood belonged to a single individual, presumably the murderer. If the murder has been committed, it reminds me of the circumstances attendant on the death of Van and Jensen in Orchards in the year 34. Do you remember that case? The case, Gregson? No, sir. Read it up. You really should. There's nothing new under the sun. It has all been done before. As he spoke, his nimble fingers were flying here, there, and everywhere, feeling, pressing, unbuttoning, and examining, while his eyes were the same far-away expression which I had already remarked upon. So swiftly was the examination made that one could hardly have guessed the minuteness with which it was conducted. Finally, he stiffed the dead man's lip, glanced at the soles of the patient's their boots. He has not moved at all. He has not moved at all. He asked. No more than necessary for the purposes of the examination. You can take him to the moratorium now, he said. There's nothing more to be learned. Gregson had a stretcher and 4 men at hand. At his call, they entered the room, and the stranger was lifted and carried out. As they raised him, a ring tinkled down and rolled across the floor. Lestrade grabbed it and stared at it with mystified eyes. There's been a woman here, he cried. This is a woman's wedding ring. That wasn't the right voice. This is a woman's wedding ring. He held it out as he spoke upon the palm of his hand. We all gathered round and gazed at it. There was no doubt that the circlet of plain gold had once adorned the finger of a bride. This complicates matters, said Gregson. Heaven knows they were complicated enough before. You sure it doesn't simplify them, observed Holmes. There's nothing to be learned by staring at it. What did you find in his pockets? Why, you have it all here, said Gregson, pointing to the litter of objects upon one of the bottom steps of the stairs. A gold watch number 97163 by Barton of London, gold Albert chain, very heavy and solid, gold ring with monostonic device, a gold pin, bulldog head with ruby eyes, face Russian in leather cord case with cords of inclined shape, Gilmer of Cleveland, corresponded with EJD upon the linen. No patch, but loose money to the extent of £7.13, pocket edition of Baracino's Decameron with the name of Joseph Strangerson upon the flyleaf. 2 letters, one addressed to E.J. Jobber and one to Joseph Strangerton. At what address? American Shrine Stand, to be left if till call for. I were both upon the Conan Steamship Company and referred to the sale of their boats from Liverpool. It's clear that an unfortunate man. I'm getting off the accentation. It's clearer than. It's clearer than. I had a voice. I'm losing it. It's clear that an unfortunate man was about to. It's clear that an unfortunate man was about to return. Nope. That's going too Transylvanian. In Russian. It's clear that an unfortunate man was about to return to New York. That was a bit Boston, but. Have you made inquiries as to this man and Strangerson? I did it once, sir, said Gregson. I have the advertisement sent to all the newspapers, and one of my men has gone to the American Exchange and he has not returned yet. Have you sent for Cleveland? We telegraphed this morning. How did you heard your inquiries? We simply detailed the circumstances, that he should be glad of any of the information which could help us. You don't ask for particulars at any moment which appear to you to be crucial. I asked about Strangerson. Nothing else. There are no circumstances on which the whole case appears to hinge. Will you not telegraph again? I've said all I have to say, said Grinson, in an offended tone. Sherlock Holmes chuckled to himself and appeared to be about to make some remark, when Lestrade, who had been in the front room while he was holding the conversation in the hall, reappeared upon the scene, with his hands in a pompous, self-satisfied manner. Mr. Gregson, he said, I have just made a discovery of the highest importance, and one which has been overlooked. I hadn't made a careful examination of the walls. The little man's eyes sparkled as he spoke, and was evidently in a state of suppressed exultation at having scored a point against his colleague. Come here, he said, bustling back into the room, the atmosphere of which felt clearer since the removal of the ghastly inmate. Now stand there. He struck a match on his boot and held it up against the wall. Look at that, he said triumphantly. He had remarked that the paper had fallen away in parts, in which particular corner of the room large pieces had peeled off, leaving a yellow square of coarse plastering. Across a bare space there was a scrawl in blood-red letters, a single word, Rocher. What do you think of that? Cried the detective, with the air of a showman exhibiting his show. This was overlooked, because it was in the darkest corner of the room. No one thought of looking here. The murderer had written with his or her own blood, seeing the smear which has trickled down the wall, that disposes of the idea of suicide anyhow. Why was that corner chosen to write on? I will tell you. The candle on the mantelpiece. It was lit at the time, and it was lit in the corner would be the brightest instead of the darkest portion of the wall. And what does it mean now that you have found it? Said Gregson in a discrepitory voice. Mean? Why, it means that the writer was about to put the female name Rachel, but was disturbed because he or she had time to finish. You mark my words, when this case comes to be cleared up, you will find the woman's name Rachel has something to do with it. It's all very clear to me. All very clear for you to laugh. Mixing up words. It's all very well for you to It's all very well for you to laugh, Mr. Sherlock Holmes. You may be very smart, but the old hound is the best when all is said and done."
"I really beg your pardon," said my companion, who was ruffled, the little man's temper, by bursting into an explosion of laughter. "You certainly have the credit of being the first of us to find this out, and you say it bears every mark of which have been written by the other participant in last night's mystery. Have I not had time to examine this room yet? But with your permission, I shall do so now."
As he spoke, he whipped a tape measure and a large round magnifying glass from his pocket, which these two implements he trotted noiselessly about the room, sometimes stopping, occasionally kneeling, once lying flat upon his face. So engrossed was he with his occupation that he appeared to have forgotten our presence, for he chatted away to himself under his breath the whole time, keeping up a running fire of exclamations, groans, and whistles and little cries, suggestive of encouragement and of hope. As I watched him, I was irresistibly reminded of pure-blooded, well-trained foxhounds as it dashed back and forth, or backwards and forwards through the covert, whining in his eagerness until it came across the law. Said, for 20 minutes or more he continued his researches, measuring with the most exact care the distance between marks which were entirely invisible to me, and occasionally applying his tape to the wall in an equally incomprehensible manner. In one place he gathered up very carefully a little pile of grey dust from the floor, packed it away in an envelope. Finally he examined his glass the word upon the wall, while going over every letter of it with the most minute exactness. This done, he appeared to be satisfied, for he replaced his tape and his glass in his pocket. "They say that genius is an infinite capacity for taking in pains," he remarked with a smile. "It is very bad in definition, but it does apply to detective work." Gregson and Lestrade had watched the maneuver of this amateur companion with considerable curiosity and some contempt. They evidently failed to appreciate the fact that I had begun to realize that Sherlock Holmes' small actions were all directed towards some definite and practical end.
"Think what you want of it, sir. Or what do you think of it, sir?"
How did I misread it like that? They both asked.
"It would be robbing you of the credit of the case if I were to presume to help you," he remarked, my friend. "You are doing so well now that it would be a pity for anyone to interfere." There was a word of sarcasm in his voice as he spoke. "If you will let me know how your investigation goes, I shall be happy to give you any help I can. In the meantime, I'd like to speak to the constable who found the body. Can you give me his name and address?"
Lestrade glanced at his notebook. "John Rance," he said. "He's off duty now. You'll find him at 46 Alderley Court, or Kennington Park, or Gate. I'm sorry, what? Rance? Wasn't... Oh my god. Is it really going to be the constable who found the body? I'm going to guess that the H got fucked up in the... Or it wasn't in, and it was expanded to an H separately during the struggle. Well, it was written in the struggle, and afterwards he noticed it and expanded it to an H because he couldn't cover it up right away. That's my theory. Holmes took a note of the address.
"Come along, Doctor," he said. "We shall go and look him up. I tell you one thing which may help you in this case," he continued, turning to the two detectives. "There's been murder done, and the murderer was a man. He was more than 6 feet high, was in the prime of his life, had small feet for his height, whose coarse, square-toed boots, and smoked trichomically cigars. He came here with his victim in a four-wheeled cab, which was drawn by a horse of 3 old shoes, whom one knew. blew on his left fore, or one new one on his off foreleg. In all probability, the murderer had a forked face. Fingernails on his right hand were remarkably large. There was only a few indentations. They may assist you. Lestrade and Gregson glanced at each other with an incredulous smile. "If this man was a murderer, how was it done?" asked the former. "Poison," Sherlock Holmes curtly, and strode off. "One other thing, Lestrade," he added, turning around at the door. "Rashad is the German word for revenge, so don't lose your time looking for Miss Rachel." With which his partisan shot, he walked away, leaving the two rifles open-mouthed behind him. Chapter 4. What Jean Rochon Had to Sell. It was 1 o'clock when we left number 3, the Lochran Garden. Sherlock Holmes led me to the nearest telegraph office, which he dispatched a long telegram. He then hailed a cab and ordered the driver to take us to the address given us by Lestrade. "There is nothing like first-hand evidence," he remarked. "As a matter of fact, my mind is entirely made up upon the case, but we still may as well learn all there is to be learned." "You amaze me, Holmes," I said. "Surely you are not sure, as you pretend to be, of all particulars which you gave." "There is no room for mistake," he answered. "This is the very first thing which I observed upon arriving, that a cab was made 2 ruts with its wheel close to the curb. Now, up to the last night we had no rain for a week, so that those wheels which left such a deep impression must have been those during the night. There were marks on the horse's hoofs, too, the outlines of one that was far more clearly cut than that of the other 3, showing that there was a new shoe. So the cab was there again the rain began, but was not there at any time during the morning. I have Gregson's word for that. It follows it must have been there during the night, and therefore that it brought those 2 individuals to the house." "It seems simple enough," said I. "But how about the other man's height?" "Why, the height of a man, in 9 cases out of 10, can be told by the depths of his stride. It's simple calculations enough. There's no use my boring you with figures. I had this fellow's stride down on the clay outside and on the dust within. Then I had a way of checking my calculations. When a man writes on a wall, he instinctively leans down to write at about the level of his own eye. Now the writing was just about 6 feet from the ground. It was child's play." "And his age?" I asked. "Well, if a man can stride 4.5 feet, with the smallest effort, he can't be quite in the sere and yellow. That was the breadth of a puddle on the garden walk, which he had evidently walked across. Patent leather boots had gone round, and square toes had topped over. There was no mystery about it at all. I was simply applying to ordinary life a few of these perspective observations and deductions which I advocated in that article. Is there anything else that puzzles you?" "The fingernails and the trichopoli," I suggested. "The writing on the wall was done with the man's forefingers dripping in blood. My glass allowed me to observe that the plaster was slightly scratched in doing it, which would not have been the case if the nails had been trimmed. I gathered up some scattered ash from the floor. It was dark in color, flaky. Such an ash can only be made by trichopoli. I have made a special study of cigar ashes. In fact, I have written a monograph upon the subject. I flatter myself that I distinguish it at a glance with the ash of a known brand, either of a cigar or of tobacco. Such a detail that skilled detectives differ from the Gregson and the straw type." "And the forward face?" "Ah, that's more of a daring shot, though I have no doubt that I was right. You must not ask me that present state of affair." I pressed my hand upon my brow. "My head is in a whirl," I remarked. "The more one thinks of it, the more mysterious it grows. How come these 2 men, if there were 2 men, into an empty house? What became of the cabman who drove them? How could one man compel another to take poison? How did the blood come? Where did the blood come from? What was the object of the murder, since robbery had no part in it? How come the woman's ring there? Above all, why should the second man write up in German, Rocher, before decamping? I confess that I cannot see my possible way of reconciling all the facts. Getting some hurt in the back of my throat. Different from usual. I hope I'm not getting sick. I keep hearing about people getting sick lately. I don't go out very often. I did yesterday, but that's still not very often. My companion smiled approvingly. In some of the difficulties of the situation, scrutiny, and well, he said, there is much that is still obscure, and though I have quite made up my mind on the main fact as to poor Lestrade's discovery was simply a blind intent to put the police upon a wrong track. By suggesting socialism in secret societies, it was not done by a German. The A, if you notice, was printed somewhat after the German fashion. Now a real German inevitably prints in the Latin characters, that he may safely say that this was not written by one, but by a clumsy imitator, who overdid his part. It was simply a ruse to divert inquiry into a wrong channel. I'm not going to tell you much more of the case, Doctor. You know, a conjurer gets no credit when he has explained his trick. If I show you too much of my method of working, you'll come to the conclusion that I am a very ordinary individual after all. I shall never do that, I answered. You have brought deduction as near an exact science as it ever will be brought in this world. My companion flushed up with pleasure at my words and the earnest ways in which I uttered them. I had already observed that he was sensitive to flattery on the score of his art, as any girl could be of her beauty. I'll tell you one other thing, he said. Patent leathers and square shoes come in the same cab. They walked down the path together, as friendly as possible, arm in arm in all probability. When they got inside, they walked up and down the room, or rather, Patent leathers stood still for a while. Squarecrows walked up and down. I could read all that in the dust. I could read that he walked. He grew more and more excited. That's shown by the increased length of his stride. He was talking all the while, working himself up, no doubt in a fury. Then tragedy occurred. I've told you all I know myself now, for the rest is summarized as in conjecture. We have a good working basis, however, on which to start. We must hurry, for I want to go to Halley's concert to hear Norman Miranda this afternoon. The conversation had occurred while our cab had been threading its way through a long succession of dingy streets, dreary by a way. In the dingiest, dreariest of them, our driver suddenly came to a stand. That's Audley Court, in there. He pointed to a narrow slit in the line of dead-colored bricks. You'll find me here when you come back. I need to check something. I just realized I'm missing something. So I actually will have to pause here. There is a matter I must address. So I'll bring the stream to a close. But I'd like to wish you all a fond farewell, and thank you for stopping by. If you like this, follow me on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and until next time, fare thee well.